Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Today I have decided to go through the most commonly appearing questions under our Aero testing videos and also the ones I get on Instagram and on other platforms regarding our work in Aero testing and setting up riders for their fastest possible setups. Because there are some quite common misconceptions, there are some repeating topics, and I just wanted to clear these up. So one question, or kind of a group of questions I often get, is often phrased as the following: which frame is the fastest, which wheel is the fastest, which helmet, skin suit, XYZ is the fastest, aerodynamically speaking. And the answer to that is I have no idea. That's why we do testing. You see, if you take the system of a bike and rider, every component interacts with everything else, every setup change interacts with everything else. So it's impossible to logically predict which one of them is going to affect the other and in which way. I have tried guessing and putting together some correlations before, but to be honest, the more testing we've done, the more those, or the less those kind of worked out. There are always some exceptions, there are always some things that you don't really expect. There are things that you would have bet your house on that will be faster than other things, and they are not. So really, I have just decided to get rid of these predictions or guesses altogether. There are some trends, most of them are not very clear or straightforward. So yeah, as far as aerodynamics go, there are no real logical assumptions that you can make. Unfortunately, you have to test things just to be sure. And yeah, as I said, oftentimes if you assume that something is going to be faster, more often than not, it isn't. And the same goes for different brands, because there are different interactions, as I said. So yeah, it's on one hand it's very simple because it's impossible to predict and you can only do it empirically. On the other hand, yeah, it's complicated because everything has an effect on everything. And with tires, for example, or chains or lubricants, it's fairly straightforward because those are isolated things and have an isolated impact. So it's the drivetrain loss or the wrong resistance or whatnot. But yeah, aerodynamics is a whole can of worms, and it's just not possible to say what's going to work with one person will not work with another person. One part that will do well on this bike will not do well on another bike. So yeah, it depends. I know this is not the answer that you want to hear, but this is the reality of it. So yeah, whatever is fastest, I have no idea. And you have to also consider there never was, and there probably never will be one fastest thing or singular thing. There are multiple ways to achieve a fast setup with kind of and I know this firsthand because I've changed quite a few bikes and wheels and skin suits and helmets over the years, and they all converge and slightly improve over the years as I get better and the equipment gets better. But vastly different things all converge to one point. So yeah, I hope that's good enough explanation. So please don't post these questions because I really have no idea whatsoever. I can tell you what was faster in that particular setup, but I can't do generalizations because it's just impossible. So this is the main point I wanted to address. Number two, and this is more of a common, not really a question, but oftentimes, particularly with not so well-informed individuals, I get hit with a kind of reaction that says that, yeah, we do all this testing and invest in the equipment, etc. But in the end, power and rider fitness is always going to be more important. And yes, that is true. And I completely agree with that. However, and this might be completely shocking for you, but you can do both. You can have the best equipment, you can have the most optimized setup, you can do a lot of testing, and you can do the training. If you want to be on the top level of this sport, you can't just do one of them. And I think that should be obvious. The clients who come in, I don't tell them, okay, now we saved 30 watts in a setup, now we don't need to train anymore, so you can have your FTP drop down by the same amount and it will be fine. No, we want to have the best possible performance, and for that you need the training and you need the testing. It's not one or the other. So yeah, please, just common sense. Yeah, so then I also often get questions regarding the CDA changes and the absolute values in testing. So first up, you may have noticed this, but I've never shared the absolute CDA values of clients in their tests. And that's because they pay us to do the tests, and it's their proprietary data that is protected and it's not public. So that's the reason. If someone specifically agrees to share their CDA, which hasn't happened before, then we will do it, of course. In my own tests, I have no problem sharing my CDA because I choose to do so. But other than that, we are paid to do these tests, and the results, even though it's an abstract thing, but it's a piece of information that is the property of the client. So that's why I can talk about percentage differences or watt differences to just give you an idea, but to be honest, knowing either of the things will not help you, because, as I said, one thing that improves the CDA for person A might worsen the CDA for person B. So the results are not transferable. How many watts does XYZ save? And again, it's a question that I don't really like, because firstly, it saves compared to what? You know, it's a super vague question. It just, how many watts does this disc wheel save? Yes, but compared to another identical head disc wheel, or a Princeton disc wheel, or a Mavic box section aluminum wheel, what? Compared to what? So that's one thing that people just, I don't know. So but they don't think about the questions when they pose them. So the one thing that you need to consider is, what are the two things or multiple things that you are comparing against each other? You can't give a saving without a comparison. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you can't give a saving if you don't know the conditions. So companies often like to use these watt savings. I sometimes use them, but you need to have a reference. So Aero drag, as probably most of you know by now, is a force. And in order to establish a power difference for this force, or how the force changes with different setup changes, you need to specify it at a speed. So that's one thing that's very important. And a lot of people pick on this because manufacturers claim these watt savings at certain speeds and they deem it too high. But the thing is that you can say in general that the power required to overcome drag raises by the cube of speed. So 2 watt saving at 30 km/h means an what is it, 2 cubes, 8 watts at 60 k's per hour. So, sorry, 30 to 60. So yeah, 2 watts at 30 k's per hour seems like a small saving. In reality, it's quite a big saving, because the drag in the first place is a very small number in itself. So proportionally, it can be quite big. So anyway, that's a different topic. But the key takeaway is this: if you ask me how many watts does it save, you need to compare. You need to know what are you comparing, and you need to know at which speed, at least, if you don't specify other conditions. Because if you take the whole setup, and for example, lighter versus more aero setups, things like that, you also need to involve more variables like the gradient and wind and rider weight. So yeah, it's a bit more complicated than that. I got a huge amount of requests about the newish Continental 111 Aero tire, because it's kind of a popular item these days and most people seem to get it. What I don't get though, and also the reason why I'm not using it, is that if you look at the rolling resistance tests, the Conti 111 tire is based on the carcass of the regular GP5000 STR. And while that's a fast tire, it's nowhere near as fast as the time trial specific options, so the Corsa Speed or the TTTR from Continental, these two mainly. No other viable alternatives at the moment. So yeah, and while they claim some big savings in terms of drag, if you look at their own charts, you can actually see, if you think about it a little bit, that these are all measured or claimed at a very high yaw angle, like, I don't know, 18, 20 degrees, something like that. That's where the biggest savings are. When do you see those yaw numbers on a time trial bike if you're going at any reasonable speed? Never. So that's why. So you have a CRR penalty, and the aerodynamic penalty they claim is very, very small in in the regions of yaw. So I would say from 0 to 5-6 degrees maybe at normal TT speeds. So yeah, that's not enough to offset the rolling resistance penalty. Now, I'm sure there is a saving because they've poured a lot of research into this, so there must be some saving from that. But this will only be a viable saving if the carcass is the same as the TTTR, so the rolling resistance is as low as this tire. Until then, no point in this tire whatsoever. So yeah, that's my take on the Continental 111. Quite common question or misconception these days. I got this even in paid consultations that I've been doing with some riders, and they ask me, what are the aero savings from shorter cranks? And I'm sorry to inform you, but there are none. Why is that? So generally when I do bike fitting with my clients, of course, particularly in time trial setups or triathlon setups, we want to achieve a good CDA as well. And for that, I try to bring them as low as possible with their saddle, while still having a nice pulse shock, good biomechanical efficiency, etc. So usually it's kind of straightforward to do. And in a position like this, if you reduce the crank length, then suddenly your extension at the bottom of the stroke is not enough, and it feels weird. And I know, because I've done it myself. So to get rid of that, you have to increase your saddle height. Now what happens when you increase your saddle height? in order to preserve your position, you also have to increase your stack height. What is the result of that? Your overall frontal area increases, which is a guaranteed way to increase your CDA, as A stands for frontal area in CDA. So is there a benefit, aero benefit of shorter cranks? Well, if you take this into consideration, then yeah, quite the opposite. However, shorter cranks often have physiological benefits that enable the rider in the first place to get a better position, because there are quite a few riders that are somewhat or quite a lot limited by their hip mobility, by their pelvic rotation, etc. And for these riders, shorter cranks are an enabler. But for, let's say, again, my example probably, but that's one I know best. I'm lucky enough to have really good ability in that regard, so I'm not really limited by crank length. And for me, for example, this year I went to longer cranks because I found that with my new position, there's no point in running 160s, so I'm now 165s, which still is relatively short, but it's kind of becoming the norm, so nothing extreme, because some people go down to, I don't know, 155. So the first thing you need to consider is your bike fit, and if it's working for you optimally as it is right now, with good stability, good pelvic rotation, good pedal stroke, etc., then if everything is working, then going to a shorter crank just for the sake of it will do absolutely nothing apart from increasing that. And I wrote about it on threads already, and some people pointed out that you might not need an increase in saddle height. Well, I've done quite a few fits, I've experimented with this myself, and if you don't do that, it just becomes a bit weird. So yeah, that's my experience and opinion. There are some claims that having your legs rotating in a small radius via the shoulder cranks can be an aerodynamic benefit, which I haven't explored yet, but I can now with the Kratos cranks, and I will, of course, because these I can change from 165 to 175. So that's a big range, and then you'll definitely see some trend there. And actually I had one really good discussion with a client of mine who pointed out, and rightfully so, that people assume that you have an optimal cadence that you like to ride at. And that's not really true, because what you have as a preference is the force that you apply on the pedal. And if you preserve the force, like the way you want to ride, and change your crank length, your cadence changes naturally. And that is true, and it's not scientific, but I can empirically confirm, and for my clients as well, that it does change with crank length. And the thing is that with longer cranks, to preserve the same force, you need a slower cadence. So it's also been proven a few times already that slower cadence, on the other hand, is more aerodynamic. So there are a lot of things that are at play in here, but to summarize it, shorter cranks by themselves will not make you more aerodynamic, unless, yeah, the caveats that I mentioned. So that's what I wanted to clear up. Okay guys, so these are the things that I wanted to clear up in this video. I hope you have found this informational. If you still have any questions, then of course leave them in the comments below. And yeah, if you need help with optimizing your setup aerodynamically, or whichever other way, bike fitting, etc., or just building your dream bike like this one, of course you can reach out to us via the links below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.